Stop disrespecting me, bro. Like, don't do that. I work too hard. I work way too hard for that. Y'all write all these articles about me, and all I do is work.
I don't think the game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. That voice you just heard was Memphis head basketball coach Penny Hardaway. Listen, we don't usually talk about college, but I'm going to talk about this because Penny, obviously being a former NBA player, has some interest to me anyway, but also because that's something that we need to address. We gotta talk about that. But before we do that, we got to talk about what's going to happen this weekend around the NFL, because you know what it is, man. It's what many people are calling the best weekend in football. So let's get to it. After a really kind of ho-hum super wild card weekend, we now get set for 4 matchups in the divisional round of the playoffs. And you have going on Saturday, you have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Tennesse Titans, and the Green Bay Packers facing off against the San Francisco 49ers. Green Bay will be at home in that game. On Sunday, you will have the Buffalo Bills taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and then the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Buccaneers. I got to check out which times. I think I got those two flipped around. Point being, I'm not even going to sit here and hold you. I'm going to talk about my picks first, and then I'm going to go through why I'm picking the way that I am picking. I'm going with Cincinnati. I'm going with San Francisco. I'm going with Kansas City, and I'm going with Tampa Bay. Now, starting off with Cincinnati and Tennessee, Derrick Henry is making his return after being out for, the whole season. No, about half the season, latter half of the season with torn ACL. Like, we're not even going to act like that's not what happened, right? We're going to just that's why there's a change in my tone, because we need to talk about Derrick Henry, right? Like how fam? How do you do that? What are we doing? Right? This man's been out since week 8. How fam? How, fam? I just don't understand how we're doing this. And I say this as we have another player who made a return from another devastatingly, career-threatening injury in the same season. How, fam? When you look at Derrick Henry, the 2-time rushing champion, you're not going to be surprised if I says he's a freak of nature, right? 6'3", 240, 250, something like that. Big boy, running. And yet, I'm not sure that you are fully appreciating how freakish this actually is. I don't know if we are. I'm sorry, it's a foot fracture. I apologize. I said ACL, foot fracture. It was a Liz Frank. It was either a Liz Frank or a Jones injury, both of which though can take you out for the season. So let me not. I apologize. I said ACL. I'm thinking about somebody. Never mind. Sidetracked. The other injury, I know that is, and it's definitely season and career threatening. Now, back to Derrick Henry. A foot injury at 6'3". That's what made me stop and pause and remind myself of what this injury was. 6'3", 250. The way that he runs it takes every bit as much punishment as you would imagine. 6'3", 250. Foot injury. Out since week 8. He's starting. There's no limitation. They're going to watch him for his conditioning. That's a lot to put on him. And if it doesn't go right, then you got to count on Ryan Tannehill. And if you're telling me that I got to take Ryan Tannehill or Joe Burrow, as young as Joe Burrow is compared to Ryan Tannehill, I'm taking Joe Burrow 10 times out of 10, probably 11 out of 10, right? Now, Derrick Henry is still Derrick Henry, but he's been out since week 8. And I know the Titans have managed to create a sound running attack without him. I know they've been able to do what they've done. They've done some great things with Dontrell Hilliard and Dante Foreman. I get that. So much, though, of their longevity, their long-term success is predicated on Derrick Henry's being effective. And I'm not saying that he won't be, but how much can he be? How long can he be? Can he sustain that level of effectiveness? And then the Titans still have to account for the weapons that Cincinnati is rolling out there with Joe Burrow. And if it becomes a shootout, not only is Derrick Henry's effectiveness minimized, but also Ryan Tannehill's weaknesses are maximized or highlighted, and I think that's where they are really gonna get in trouble, because I just don't see them being able to keep up with Cincinnati and other. And now, granted, they got AJ Brown and Julio. I get that. I still don't see them being able to keep up with what Cincinnati can throw out there and how Cincinnati attacks you. And Cincinnati has a great rusher in their own, and Joe Mixon. He's not no slouch either, so it's not like they're just going up there against a pushover. That, to me, makes a world of difference. So I'm going to take Cincinnati in that game. Then you have the Packers and the 49ers. Aaron Rodgers is 0-3 against the 49ers in the playoffs, so I'm going off of that. A little bit of Homer disapproval of the Packers as well. They are getting a bunch of guys back. Bartier, I believe, is coming back. Zadarius Smith, I believe, is cleared as well. So they're going to be healthier in this one. The 49ers do get Nick Bosa healthy and cleared for the concussion protocol, to no surprise of anybody, back for this game. I just feel like what the 49ers do is so much better able to withstand the conditions at Lambeau that I think many people are banking on and giving Green Bay that ultimate kick over the top. And on top of that, San Francisco is so well coached and does things that Green Bay does. They can minimize Green Bay's pass rush. Zadarius Smith's return doesn't mean as much when you are able to run the ball the way that San Francisco does, with as many weapons and as many ways that they do. Your corners being able to cover great doesn't mean as much if you're getting the ball out quickly or you're getting into them on handoffs like they do with Ayuk and more importantly with Deebo Samuel. That's not to minimize what the Packers can do to on their own to try to key in on Samuel, more importantly, and Mitchell in the backfield. And Garoppolo's probably not going to test you deep too much, so maybe that gives them the advantage. But we've seen that be the case for forever, and no one's been able to necessarily knock them off. It's been them knocking themselves off. So I think it comes down to ultimately it's kind of the same thing with Tannehill. Which Jimmy G will they need? Will they need the one who can just turn them around and hand the ball off? Because I think he could be effective with that, because I think he can come through with timely plays in that fashion. But if you have to rely on Jimmy G, that's when it all goes downhill. So I just don't see that being the case, though. I don't know. I could be blinded. I don't care. I'll be blinded on this one matchup. I'm going to take San Francisco. On Sunday, right? And I'm not even positive of the order here, so I'm just going to pick the games. Give me Kansas City over Buffalo. As much as I like what Buffalo is doing, Kansas City has also found out how to manage their offense a lot better. And as explosive as Buffalo is, Kansas City is just as. And I think that in this time, this is probably the time where we're going to see them try to kick it up an extra notch or two, right? To try to just prove that they are still the cream of the crop. And they've had the ups and downs this year. They experienced that, the first time being sub 500 in Patrick Mahomes era, that kind of stuff. That doesn't sit well with alphas. That just doesn't. That locker room with Mahomes and Andy Reid in particular, more than anything, those two are going to be like, all right, well, now we got to do this. And they know who's coming in. And so I'm just going to take the Chiefs. And that's not to knock Buffalo. I think Buffalo is very talented. And I would not be surprised at all if they were to win this game. Not picking them. Just not going to pick them. And despite where it is, it's in Arrowhead, So, hey, man. Hey, man. I gotta go with Kansas City on this one. I'm not gonna. Like I said, I'm not surprised if Buffalo wins. I would be surprised if Buffalo wins, but I'm gonna pick Kansas City. Point blank, period. And then the final game, you have the Rams and the Buccaneers. As much as the Bucs are beat up right now, their offensive line, Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs, their two best linemen, are both banged up and questionable for this contest. Obviously, we know they don't have Antonio Brown. They have a few other injuries as well. No Ronald Jones. I believe they have till Saturday to activate Leonard Fournette. But they keep finding ways, and the GOAT is healthy. And as long as those two things are true, and like especially with the running back, who was it? Deshaun Vaughn. I can't remember his first name, but Sean Vaughn. I can't remember his first name. Vaughn. I know that. The guy that everybody was hyped on in the preseason finally got his chance to do something, and he made it work. And that's what I just see happening here. And as much as I love. I'm a big Matt Stafford fan, even as a Bears. Maybe it's because I was a Bears guy, and he always would give us a chance to stay in the game. But I'm a fan of what Matt Stafford does in his playing style, and I think that he fits what LA wants to do. But it's kind of the same thing with Kansas City, where until you show me, I can't put you over them just off of GP, just off of what you did in these regular times. Because I've seen what they do when the pressure amps up. I've also seen Matt Stafford have some shaky moments in those situations. So I'm going to go with the tried and true and stick with the Buccaneers on that one. So that's my picks. Bengals, Niners, Chiefs, Bucks. I live and die with it. It is what it is. I can't even be mad. Now, let's go into some other news around the NFL. You had the Baltimore Ravens firing Wink Martindale after, I believe, 12 seasons. He's been there for forever. And they mutually parted ways. John Harbaugh released a statement claiming that it was an amicable decision and that they just, after several productive conversations and, blase the entire spiel, he's expected Martindale is to be one of the hottest coordinators out there. I will say this. I find it interesting that they part with him after they had so many injuries to the secondary and they were still very competitive. I know they missed the playoffs, but to blame that on him with all of that side of the ball went through and not on the offense, I think is kind of short-sighted. Now, I don't know what those conversations were. I can't tell you how maybe that's what the conversation was about. And Martindale said, man, I'm out of here. I can't do this with y'all. I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. But it's just a weird separation for the Ravens and puts them in a position now where they got to kind of replace him. Now, granted, they've been able to replace coordinators before, but he's been there for a while. So just something to keep an eye on with the Ravens next season, as they might have to transition to being a team that relies a little bit more heavily on their offense, even more so than they did this year when they were so beat up. The New York Giants became the first team to hire a general manager in this cycle. There are, 8 teams that are looking for coaches and 3 teams looking for general managers, 2 now, with the Vikings and the Bears are the only ones left. The Vikings hired Buffalo's Joe Shane as their general manager, and that many think that this now means that they can bring in Brian Flores because of their past together. Now, I will say this about this. Let me clear my throat because I want you to hear it. There's been a lot of talk. I talked about this last episode with the Bears and how their process has gone on, and people have sandbagged them, have just torn them apart. Right? They've teed up all of their insults to lob at the Bears about how slow they've gone about it. The Giants became the first team to hire a general manager, and on top of that, outside of the organization that he came from, I challenge anybody to tell me that they were an outright fan of Joe Shane. Shane? I've already confused myself. Of his before this hiring. And I say that as a person who's written about general manager candidates who I've had on top of my list. Ed Dodds, the guy who pulled his name out and had everybody up in a row because, look, there's guys that don't even want to be a part of this job. Even though he's done that with every situation for the past few years. He's waiting for the perfect fit for him, which I don't blame him. That's fine. That's his prerogative. But it doesn't mean that the Bears process is faulty. Now, to the Giants, they are now the first to hire one. Will anybody rush out and say the Giants nailed it? Because that's what happens. That's what people were asking for. The Bears are waiting. They're going to get passed up. There's only 3 teams looking for general managers. There's a ton of candidates. You can't tell me that you're going to miss out necessarily on the wrong one. Even if it's the one that people wanted and the one that you wanted, it doesn't mean it was the right one for you when it all came down to it. It has to play out still. Right? So, was I upset that Dodds pulled out? Yeah, that sucks, man. I was hoping that he was going to be the guy. But, whatever. Again, we're not ever really sure what these guys are doing in these roles. And I think that to be invested beyond simply the person that you might think, did you have a feeling about, right? Just to have an inkling. Beyond that, I think it's foolish just because you don't know what they're going to do when they get in the building and how they're going to play with others, which is kind of applies to Flores as well, because for a guy who ran through so many coaches and couldn't even work with the quarterback, something that we've already experienced here in Chicago with Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky, I'm surprised that so many people are on the Brian Flores train. I get that he's the stern-faced guy, but if you're still doing the same type of things that Matt Nagy was doing, running through coordinators, running through quarterbacks, running through or not being able to work with the team's draft pick at quarterback, what are we doing? A good defense with a shaky offense. What's the change? What's the change? I just refuse to believe that that's going to make that big of a – I just don't see it. I just don't see it. There's nothing there other than Brian Flores doesn't seem as nice as Matt Nagy. And Matt Nagy apparently wasn't as nice as he made himself seem. So, I don't know. And then you go to the Houston Texans, who, bless their heart. Bless their heart. They want other teams to want Josh McCown so that they can legitimize their interest in Josh McCown and therefore hire him. This is so out of bounds that you have other organizations, via the anonymous quote and sources or whatever, citing that this is a bad look for them. And Jaguars too, trying to do stuff like this. They're circumventing the process of coaches who have fought and sweat and earned their way into the league ranks, right? And some people have pointed, well, what about Jim Harbaugh? He's a college coach. Jim Harbaugh literally was an NFL coach before. So that's not the same. That's not even anywhere near the same thing. Josh McCown is like an assistant coach in like high school. He's not even be an assistant in the NFL, be a quarterbacks coach in the NFL. Why are they even going about this way? This is the second offseason that they've done this. So not only are they circumventing the process, but then they're trying to, like, you know, if you like them, hire them. Just go ahead and do it. And look, I wouldn't agree with it, but I think I could agree with you having that kind of conviction more than I can agree with you just sitting on the fence and acting like it's not that big of a deal. Like, that's a bit weird. You know, we all know that you guys are trying to do it, so just go ahead and do it. I don't understand why that has to be the case. But it's the Texans, and as I always say, some organizations are doomed to perpetually be farm systems for other organizations just because of how they operate. And for the Texans, that's been the case for quite some time now. They had one of the best units with Deshaun Watson. He contributed largely to the malfunctions that are going on now, but they have not done anything to kind of dig themselves out of that hole, and I think that's where that principle that I was talking about applies, where just some teams, they're going to be farm systems. I'm sorry to tell you. Sorry to break it down to you that way. And that, again, brings me back to the Bears, where they're waiting. They've interviewed one process, and people are like, oh, my goodness. And you have reports of people come away confused by their process and this, that, and the third. Okay, well, name me the worst head coaching candidate that they've interviewed, and I think that would be Leslie Frazier at this point by most accounts. And he would still be an upgrade over Matt Nagy, if not just a boring one. It's not going to do much for you. You're not raising your ceiling at all. You're just lowering, or you're just raising your floor. And the next step up will be Jim Caldwell. And I said this on Sports Cubicle with my guy Mike Mercado. I got to get his name right. Mike Mercado, Sports Cubicle and Sports on the Couch. And I told him, Jim Caldwell's been getting a lot of love from people for being unduly let go by the Lions. And I get that. He definitely was. But the flack that's come towards Leslie Frazier is a bit odd. I get people don't want it just because it does feel like the Bears ownership holding on to that 85 championship. They got to let that go. Let that go. Don't do that. But I think the criticism towards Frazier is a bit undue just because he also had a team that he got to play very competitive and well and was saddled with Christian Ponder at quarterback. Like, what are we doing? Let's if we talk about Jim Caldwell's situation with Detroit, let's talk about Minnesota. Minnesota hasn't necessarily been a smooth operation in its entire existence either. So, just, as I was saying with the article for Last Word on Pro Football, a lot of noise that's been crowding the Bears this off season already. It's clouding the view of what's been an all right process in my eyes. I mean, they can always mess it up. So can any team. So I just don't think that there's any hallmarks yet of them screwing it up any more than anybody else. And just because you don't like how long it's taken doesn't mean they're getting it wrong. And again, as I've said many times, if this is the people that are Polian's cronies, okay, all right. I guess that's, people are mad about the Dodge thing, and that's a big sign. Dodge is a Polian guy too. So, like, what now? That's what my problem, I think, my biggest issue is with people dogging on the Bears is that there's you run back into this loop where you kind of had to pick one or the other, and you never get that. You never get anybody picking a lane. It's always trying to just dogpile on and keep going, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. We'll see what happens, man. We'll see. The Sun, they can screw it up because that's what they've been doing. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. No, not at all. But they also probably don't deserve the vitriol before anything's even happened. One general manager's been hired with a tie to a head coach that you probably shouldn't want as much as you do anyway, in my opinion. It's just what it is. Dak Prescott was fined $25,000 for his comments about the refs after their loss to the San Francisco 49ers, in which the referees, the fans in the stands rather, threw debris, trash at the referees following that game and how they felt it was poorly officiated. I don't even care. I don't even want to litigate that. I want to play you this, and then we can talk about why this probably is being blown out of proportion. And here goes.
What do you think about the fans feeling your balls on the field there comparing as you see that? I think one of these is
No, I didn't see that. It's sad. I mean, you're talking about a team, you're talking about men that come out each and every day of their lives and give everything to the sport, give everything to this game of football. Nobody wants to succeed more than we want to succeed. I understand fans and the word fan for fanatic. I get that. But To know everything that we put into this day in and day out, try our hardest. Nobody comes in the game wanting or expecting to lose, and for people to react that way when you're supposed to be a supporter and be with us through thick and thin, that's tough.
I think they were gaming at the referees.
Yeah, they were at the referees.
Shit, credit to them then.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
They were doing it.
Oh, credit to them.
Zach, what did Michael Parsons say in the locker room after the game? And how
So there was Dak Prescott. At first, borderline admonishing the fans for tossing trash at the players, and then said, "Oh shit, we're credited to them then for tossing at the referees." And now he's been fined $25,000 because you can't say that about the refs. My problem with that is that you can't say that about the refs. Now don't throw trash at people. Come on, have some class. Don't throw trash at people. But the referees that we have in today's sports have come under much scrutiny in the social media spheres, only to be shielded and protected by their leagues. And I don't think that's necessarily conducive to a better product. And which is why we keep seeing the same trash, missed calls and blown calls, over-officiated games, over-officiated players, under-officiated players. So my biggest issue with this is that they are fining the man for speaking his mind. You wanted him to do a press conference immediately after a charged playoff loss as a game that they were leading in, right? You want him to go and talk about it? You gonna get it. I don't agree with the fine. I don't. You can say that you don't agree with him, but to fine him in the moment, that's gonna be. Yeah, he's the quarterback. He's the face. He probably shouldn't have said it out loud, but hey, man, humans going human. And if you're gonna ask me what happened, and as you can hear, there's laughter. Because I think a lot of those people in that room agreed with him that the refs weren't great. Maybe they don't agree with the actions. I hope not, because again, don't throw trash at people. Trash people throw trash at people. Don't do that. But I mean, if he got an argument, man, and again, you're gonna ask him to do an interview right after a charged loss like that, guess what? It's gonna happen. I don't understand finding somebody for an emotional moment. I just don't. You did this. You have done this. You've done this. This is you. This is your fault. I just don't appreciate it. I don't know. And again, he has come back and taken back and said he shouldn't have said it and all that. He did the typical moonwalk. But my problem is with the fine, because if you were letting these refs get criticized more, and maybe if the league was coming down on them a little bit harsher, we saw Jerome Broger's crew won't be moving on. If the league was coming down on them a little bit harsher, more publicly, maybe people wouldn't feel the need to come out at them this way. But it always feels like the referees are just calling things willy-nilly and skate. We know that's not necessarily the case, but a little goes a long way in terms of just the public acknowledgement of things. Like the NBA's 2-minute drill, it's a little annoying because it doesn't fix anything, but it is a level of transparency that I think kind of quells some of the outrage. Now people are kind of a little bit past it and they want to be proactive with it, but still, it did a little bit to quell some of that anger towards the way things are being officiated. So I just don't like the fine because, again, emotional moment, also stuff that I think he had a little bit left to stand on. Switching gears. Should Ben Simmons stay put with the Philadelphia 76ers? I was talking to my brother about this, and that's a lot of my sports conversations. I got to get him on one time so y'all can meet him. My man's hilarious. We're talking about Philadelphia and Daryl Morey's comments about things are getting less likely they're going to trade him. They really want Ben to stay around. And my brother brought the point that there's really not a better fit for Ben and for the Sixers than Ben. And I can't really disagree with that. With as dominant as Joel Embiid is, do you really want another star that's going to command some attention from him? Now, I'm not saying that he is going to be a ball hog or that you're going to want teams to be able to key in on him that way. But Ben is that kind of superstar that where he has the ball, but isn't looking to take away from Joel Embiid. They really do have to work out passes. And I'm going to go ahead and say that it's on them too to step up and man up and quit being babies about it. I know both of them want to be recognized as the guy on the team, but they got to realize that nobody wins in the NBA without having another guy on the team. That's been true since Mike. That's been true since before Mike, before anybody tries to jump in and say that. You have to have somebody else. And in this day and age, right, if neither one of them are Mike, they're different kind of talents. I understand that. They're not Bron. They're different kind of talents. I understand that. But that's why they need each other. Embiid needs somebody to take that load off of him where he doesn't have to control everything. But he's so dominant that you want him to be the one. And then with Ben, He can find a way to get guys involved and elevate their level to where if you get somebody who's solely a scorer, which is what the thought process was behind Tobias Harris, it should work out in theory. It hasn't worked out in practice, but in theory, it made a lot of sense. And so I can't disagree with his thought process, man. Ben really should stay put, and Embiid really should make an effort to extend that olive branch, and Ben should make an effort to accept it and work on his damn game. They just want you to be aggressive. They want you to be a killer. You walk around and talk like you a killer, be a killer on the court. That's all they want. And I've disagreed from the jump with their outwardly vocal approach about it. I have not liked that at all. I've been saying that they've been very active in how this has played out. But at the same time, Ben, you a killer. Be a killer. Kill, B. That's all they want. That's all they want, and I can't blame them for that. They know what you're capable of, and they know what level that would take this team. And they're sitting high in the East right now, and he hasn't even played. Can you imagine what they'd be doing if he was playing at peak level? That look to that pass up dunk with Trae Young guarding him was a bad look. There were 3 minutes left in that game, and it would have tied it. 3 minutes, like, yeah, come on. We're doing way too much, and that's why I say it's on Philly, because they've letting this get blown out of proportion. Like, Embiid, what are you talking about, bro? 6th seed right now in the East. What are you talking about, bro? Why are you going public with this? You need the guy back on the team. You need the guy back on the team in the playoffs. That's when you're going to need him. You need somebody to do what he's doing, trying to scan the floor. But you do need him to be more aggressive. They both got to step up and grow up. This is a maturity thing here. This is two alpha, quote-unquote, guys, right? I don't know how much either one can be called an alpha, but Embiid won't be aggressive on the floor, and Joel Embiid openly calls himself Troel, so whatever. But they're dominant players when they're right. And they need to be dominant together because they could dominate. Houston reportedly wants Russell Westbrook back, and I only bring this up because they're trying to trade John Wall, and I don't know why this would work for any one of these teams, but I do think John Wall would be a better fit for LeBron and them. But we haven't really seen him play. So is it a better fit with this little bit of season left? Like, I just don't understand this conversation at all. I've heard about common interest on the other way, with the Lakers maybe pursuing Wall, and I just don't get it. They passed up on Buddy Hield when LeBron should have been the point guard the whole time. I don't get it. LeBron was playing center and he was dominating, but they weren't. I don't get it. They were beating up on bad teams. Again, a theme of this one has probably been, what are we doing? But I've already done that, so we're not gonna call this episode that. But what are we doing? You're just trying things. You're piecemealing things because you did something building this roster that probably shouldn't have happened. I'm trying to win some favor and bringing Russ home. Trying to control some narratives, bringing Russ home. It has not worked out that way. And most people who were seeing this on the outside could have told you, even if they liked it because Russ was coming home, they would have told you, this probably ain't going to work, Pippen. This is probably not going to cut it. And it's not. Kyrie returns. Does he make the Brooklyn Nets the favorites? Kyrie Irving has been back, and he's on a part-time basis, not able to play in home games, but has been making his impact felt in 6 games on the road, averaging 22 points, 5.2 assists, 4.7 boards. He's shooting 49.6% from the field and 36% from 3. He's just been back since 6 games. Like, he's just been back since 6 games. Does he make them the favorite in the East? And I would argue that if they're healthy, yes, but they're never all healthy. And I think that in and of itself is probably where the biggest question mark for them is. Kevin Durant's famous quote at the end of last season when they got eliminated, I know how close I was to send him home. His big ass foot was on the line, which it was. Shouts out to my peoples for pointing that out immediately, like, his toe. And Irving over his last 3 games, 27 points, 6.7 assists, 4.3 boards, 52% from the floor, 40% from 3. So he's heating up. But they're never all healthy, and that's, I think, the one reason why you can't put them over the top, and why I think you still got to have Milwaukee up there, who just beat up on the Bulls. They didn't beat up on the Bulls. I take that back. They hung on to the Bulls, which I think is a good sign for the Bulls, because who will be without Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball? Zach LaVine should be back next week. Lonzo Ball will be back until the middle of March, which is a big blow. But as I went over on my Twitter, again, follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. They have 19 games in February. 7 of those games are against teams in the playoffs right now. At the time I tweeted it, actually. Well, I haven't checked the standings, how they switched since then. 3 more games against teams that are that were in the play-in tournament that would have qualified for the play-in tournament had the season stopped. So that's 10 games against playoff or play-in teams. But again, bottom half of them playoff teams and the play-in teams, they should be able to beat. So that shouldn't be an issue, even without Lonzo, especially once Zach gets back. Now, add to that the fact that they were very, very close with the Buccaneers. With the Milwaukee Bucks, 90-94 loss. I'm still in NFL mode. 9-94 loss on Friday night against the Bucks. The Bulls did without Lonzo, without Zach. Bodes very well for their postseason outlook. Now back to the Nets and the Bucks. The Bucks still have to be the favorite until one of those teams topples them, just because of how physical they can play when they are all right. Now they didn't play their best game against the Bulls, and maybe that is a foretelling sign, which could put the Nets back in contention. But like I said, you can't count on the Nets being healthy, and we already have talk about James Harden leaving for Philadelphia. I can't imagine that's making things too easy for them in that locker room. Now they're Hall of Famers in there, so they can overcome it, but it doesn't help. And it's not conducive to the long-term success for this team to have that looming over them. So that's just what it is. And like I said, the Bulls, the fact that they've done what they've done, what they did in that game, without those two, I don't think anybody was worried because they know how beat up they are. And I still think they should make a move for a big man who has a little bit of an attitude, because Vucevic does not have that. He's not physical. He's a 4. He's a stretch 4 playing the 5. He's Anthony Davis. He would be much better. He just doesn't move well enough to play the 4. Now, but what they've done with their roster being so depleted, I think is a good sign for them when they finally do get healthy. And then finally, the Hawks, 3 in a row. They beat the Bucks, they beat the Timberwolves, and then they beat the Miami Heat for the first time this season after losing the previous 2. And they did it while withstanding a huge fourth quarter from the Heat, where they scored 32 to 20 or 34 to 22 points. So they were doing their thing, and they did it by keeping it close. They didn't necessarily stay with them in points in the paint. They weren't outscored by 4 points. What was it? 42 to 36. So 6 points that they were outscored by in the paint. But that's a much smaller gap than it had been in the previous 2 matchups. And I wrote about it for Storing Down South that they have to make sure that they are playing inside out, because they shot way too many threes. They were shooting like 40-something threes per those last 2 games against the Heat. This one they only shot like 30. So they got it in much better control. They played it within themselves, and I think that's got to be their formula going forward. I know they can fall over the 3 ball. They don't have those kind of shooters. They really are an inside-out kind of team where Trey's got to get into the lane. He's got to find the bigs, and then they got to kick out from there. Everything else is just noise. When you start playing on the perimeter too much and start dancing around with the ball outside and not even attacking the defense, they become so easy to defend, it's not even funny. And on the other end, same difference. You know, and it helps when you get Capella back, and he came off the bench last night, but he will be starting obviously going forward. And you saw why with Onyeka Okongwu getting into foul trouble, and then John Collins got into foul trouble. He's been officiated so poorly, but that's a whole other conversation that we'll probably talk about for Storing Down South at another time. The fact of the matter is, this is 3, and as I wrote about after that Bucks win, could be the start of something special for the Hawks, who went on a run last time they beat the Bucks. So 3 now. They got their next game against Charlotte before they come home for 6 games, I believe it is, homestand. The Charlotte matchup is going to be a big one. We'll see what happens, but I definitely love the fact that they are finally figuring out some things that they can do to kind of make things a little bit easier on themselves when it gets late in games. They still don't have another score that they can really count on, but they've gotten it through group efforts, and that might just be their formula. That's what their formula was last year, and I talked about that during the playoffs, that their depth made them so deadly because most teams were shrinking their rotations, and while the Hawks could just go 10 deep and still bring in 2 more guys that you were just not able to cover because you weren't as fresh as they were. So we'll see how long they can keep it up, and hopefully they can, but I love what I've seen so far, and I love what I saw from them most of the game last night. The fourth quarter got a little bit dicey. I think they started falling over with the 3 ball a little bit too much again, but they held on, and that's all that really matters, and so we'll see that. Now, before we get up out of here, I got to talk about this Penny clip because, my boy Penny is not long for the college ranks, and let's just check this out. Penny Hardaway, head coach of Memphis Tigers basketball.
I think the one thing I can say to this media, because this media gets kind of up sometimes when it comes to me, we don't have our full roster. Y'all know we don't have our full roster. Stop asking me stupid questions about if I feel like I can do something. If I had my roster like they did, then I feel like I can do whatever I want to do. I'm coaching really hard. My boys are playing really hard. I'm not embarrassed about nothing. We have 4 freshmen starting. Y'all need to act like it. Act like we got 17 to 18 and 19-year-olds out here trying to learn how to play against 22, 23, and 24-year-old guys. Come on, man. Stop disrespecting me, bro. Like, don't do that. I work too hard. I work way too hard for that. Y'all write all these articles about me, and all I do is work. We got young kids on the floor. They got young kids on the floor.
Now here's the thing. here's my beef with this. What makes it a BS article? Because you don't like what it said? Because you don't agree with how it was written? Was it not factual? Because if it's not factual, you probably call that article out in particular. The level of anger that he showed in that press conference is a sign of why this job just ain't for everybody, right? But more importantly, that, maybe sitting at 9-8, 3-4 in their conference, they are 7-2 at home, but they're 1-5 away. Maybe that's a better way to break it down. Break it down to him like he did. He ended up breaking it down. That's why I put that clip at the beginning, because he told you what the problem was. But the level of anger that he showed towards the media was something that you see from players. It's a level that I think that is not very becoming of a head coach. And I think to go back to football in college ranks and what we see with Penny Hardaway or with Deion Sanders at Jackson State is a testament to how much being a media figure is a skill. And I'm not sure that Penny has it, and I think ultimately that could be his downfall more than any performance because, as he mentioned, they have some issues. Now, some of that having young kids on the floor, that's college. That's what happens. But and maybe there are some I haven't read all the articles about Memphis Tigers basketball, but Jalen Duren and Amani Bates haven't lived up to their potential. People are still unsure about James Wiseman, and the process that got him to Memphis was certainly not up to par. Even though maybe the rules was a little bit lax, especially now with the NIL, but whatever. It wasn't within the rules. And now this. Love Penny as a player. Maybe there were some reasons why things didn't work out with him in the NBA that weren't necessarily all health related. Maybe this has something to do with that kind of reaction for something like this. This is routine, man. It's what happens when you're struggling. I just don't understand it, but I definitely felt like that was a step too far in terms of the reaction, and probably shows that more than likely this won't be Penny's long-term home with Memphis Tigers basketball. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the show or hit up the website, Facebook, on Clock. Try that one more time. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, you can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 3zerospod. That's the number 3 zeros and pod. And, of course, read the stuff, Last Run Pro Football, Pippin Ain't Easy, and StoringDownSouth.com. Until the very next time, man, you already know what it is. We gone.
Credit to them then.